Hello, it is Saturday afternoon already. I don't know where the morning went. I'm reading out of Joan Grant, Winged Pharaoh. This is Joan Grant. It was published in 1937 and is a book about her memories in the ancient Egypt as a young girl called Sikitsa. She's the daughter of Pharaoh. She has a brother called Nea. And this is chapter 2 of the second part of this book, entitled Lion Hunt. I was 10 years old, and for the first time I was going with my father upon a lion hunt. For a long time Benita had been giving me lessons with a throwing spear, and at last Harka, overseer of the royal chariots, had said that I was skilled enough in the driving of chariots. I wanted to go on a lion hunt to show Nea that I could share in all the things he did, so that when we grew up, if he went on an expedition against a warring country, he would take me with him into battle. I wish we were hunting leopards or crocodile and not lions, even though we hunted only old ones that attacked people working in the fields because they couldn't catch deer anymore. I hoped that the one we killed wouldn't look even a little like Nati, but if father, who loved Shamba, didn't mind killing bad lions, I knew I was silly to worry that the ones we killed might be even a very distant relation of my Nati. There was a foreigner staying at the palace, a barbarian from the northeast. At least Nea said he was. I hadn't seen him yet. I wore a boy's hunting dress like Nea's, the striped linen headdress, a pectoral of thick quilting embroidered in rays of fine gold work, wild gold armlets, and a linen kilt with a gold-studded leather belt to hold my hunting knife. When I was ready, I went to the outer court where the chariots waited. There were 40 of them lined up in a long row. Father's horse and Nea's and mine had ostrich plumes upon their heads, of scarlet and green, which were my father's colours. At the end of each horse was its charioteer, who would hold the spear until the noble who drove the chariot was ready for it, and then he would take the reins until the lion was killed. On the other side of the courtyard were the hunting dogs, black with pointed ears, like jackals, and they were held by the hound boys, 2 in each leash. My mother joined me at the top of the steps. She was wearing a blue dress embroidered with scarlet fishes and water-wavy lines of silver. Her cloak was of the new violet dye, which is made from shellfish and comes from across the sea to the north. She wore a wreath of scarlet arbita flowers. They have a very sweet smell, and her favourite unguent was scented with them. Her eyes looked a little anxious, and I hoped she was not worried about my going out hunting. I knew she wouldn't tell me if she were, for once I heard her say that if a mother was foolish enough to let her secret fears for her children shadow her days, she must not let this foolishness shadow the days of others. Ma'ata was not like that. Once, when Nea and I went out sailing, our boat got stuck on a muddy bank, and we didn't get back till late at night. Ma'ata was terribly angry with us, just because she felt frightened herself. She never realized how unfair it was of her. It hadn't been our fault at all, and we'd had no food all day except a bunch of grapes we had happened to pick on our way down to the boat. Mother wasn't a bit cross. She said how clever we had been to get off the bank at all, and she gave us specially lovely supper in her room, although it was long past our bedtime. I asked Mother what the barbarian was like, and she laughed and said, "You mustn't call him that, because he is a king in his own country, even if he is a foreigner here. His name is Sardok." And then she stopped because we heard people coming in. It was father and the guests for the hunt. When he saw me dressed as a prince, he put his arm around my shoulder and said to the man beside him, "See, I have another son." I hoped Nea heard. Nea was going along the line of horses, inspecting the harness, as though it needed it. Dear Nea, he can't help being a little grand sometimes. I thought Harka was coming with me, but father told him to go with a barbarian. I looked at Sadok and thought, you may be a king in your own country, but here you are a fat man, very fat. He had a great black beard, all curled and greased, like a decorated he-goat, and his hair was in ringlets, so heavily perfumed that you could smell him further away than a wild cat. Then we got into our chariots. Sultan came with me. I had always been fond of him for giving me natty. My horse was black and white like an ibis, so I had named him Moon Shadow. Father headed the line of chariots out of the courtyard. Sadok went next because he was the chief guest, and then Naya and I. I waved to Mother before I went out of the gate and wheeled my chariot very fast through the pylon, so she could see how good I was at driving and not worry about me. We went for about half an hour upriver to the plain of Arba, which is a great marsh, dry at this season, where there were 2 old lions who took cattle when they went down to drink. The hound boys had gone ahead along the river bank. When we reached the place to where they were going to drive the lions, the chariots were ranged in a great semicircle with Father in the middle, Sadok on one side of him and myself on the other. When a lion breaks cover, the 2 chariots between which it runs challenge each other, and between them lies the glory of the swift. In front of us there was a wide belt of high papyrus reeds where the trackers had reported the lion to be sleeping in the heat of the day. We could hear the dogs working through the reeds and the shouting of the hound boys, who carried flaming torches of dry palm wood coated with resin, which gave off a heavy black smoke to frighten the lions. I saw the smoke nearing us. Some of the horses were getting very excited and pawing the ground, but Moonshadow was being very good. Certain said he was as steady with the lion as any other horse with its own stable dog. I suppose he had become used to Natty coming out with us. I wished I didn't keep on thinking of Natty. Suddenly there was a great roaring, and a lion broke from the reeds with 4 hound dogs yelping behind him. I was so excited I could barely breathe. It seemed to be coming straight at me. I had the reins in my hand ready to give them to Certain. Then at the last minute it swerved and went between Father and Sadok. Father let Sadok go ahead. Sadok was clumsy and swerved his horse so fast that it stumbled, and when he threw his spear he missed the lion altogether. It turned and sprang at him, but he cringed down, and the lion landed on Harka and knocked him on to the ground. Father, who was close behind, leaped from his galloping chariot straight onto the lion. He dared not use his spear because of Harka, and he forced his arm under the lion's head and drove the knife into his neck. Nea and I both reached Father just as he was pulling the dead lion off Harka. I had thought Father was going to be killed, and I knew Nea had too, because he looked very pale. I felt so proud of Father, but I didn't say anything for fear of crying. Harka was still alive, but his left arm was badly torn. I sat on the ground and took his head on my lap. He opened his eyes and tried to smile at me, and then he closed them again. Father felt his heart and said that he still lived. Sadok had got out of his chariot. I hoped that the scorn Nea and I felt for him showed in our eyes, so he would know that although he was a king, in spirit he was a very little man. I said to Father, that was a great risk to take for a servant. Father's voice was like granite as he answered, no man would have done less for his friend. How dared Sadok speak of Harka like that? Harka, who was worth 1,000 fat barbarians. Harka, who had loved us all since we were children, and had taught my father to drive. Sadok must have felt our contempt, for he walked away and talked to one of his own people. That was the end of the lion hunt. Next one is chapter 3, The Healer with a Knife. Happy Saturday.